What's up, baby bards? I'm Ann Richmond, aka Hearthsinger, the head bard in charge round these parts, and today, love is in the air. With Valentine's Day fast approaching, I figured it was the perfect time to board the white ships for Romance Town. Today, we're talking about how to add romantic roleplay to your tabletop RPG. Let's get started. Hey, Babu Frick, can you haul in that gigantic disclaimer before we start? Bakoosh! Thanks, guy. I imagined him sort of pulling it along the bottom of the screen. You know what? We'll fix it in post. You can make that happen, right? Let's be clear that you can have a perfectly fantastic adventure without adding any romance at all. Everyone's table is totally valid. However, romance can create new layers to roleplay for player characters and NPCs alike. Plus, it can just be, frankly, wholesome and fun. All of that is only possible, though, if you understand what type of story your players want to tell. You need to have a crystal clear conversation with them at session 0 that includes time to say whether or not they want romance to be featured. And if so, will it be glossed over? Will it be prominent? How explicit should descriptions of character interactions be? If one player thinks their player character is going to develop feelings for another, is that something the players need to talk about in private or with the DM before it actually happens on screen at the table? Of course, there's no right and wrong here as long as everybody is comfortable, but you all have to be able to respect each other's boundaries. If you decide that romance is a factor for your character, or whether it's just a factor in general in your game, I suggest personally that you don't make it the main draw of the character. If it's their main driving factor, once it's settled, you're kinda done. It can be way more fun to let romance sizzle and simmer at the table as an obstacle or a complication in your character's overall decisions. Here's an example. When I play Irina in Curse of Strahd, she is normally an NPC, but I play her as a PC, and she is the object of Strahd's desire. She has complicated feelings about the guy. I mean, he is the BBEG after all. But that makes interaction with him difficult, and it's never as simple as good and evil, and it gives me and my DM a lot to work with. It's been a blast, and this is something we talked about before the game started. He warned me that my choice of wanting to play Irina was going to cause us to have a lot of interactions like that, and wanted to make sure I'd be okay with it. So we figured out where we stood and moved forward together as a team. The most rewarding part of it is that it gives me personal reasons to empathize with how the big bad became that way, while also giving me a reason to want to hate him and kill the ever-living shit out of him. It's fine. It's fine. What's a more interesting story, after all? Cinderella gets her prince and then goes into the sunset, or Rapunzel wants to see the floating lanterns and happens to fall for the person guiding her there, putting into perspective the entire reason she's wanted to leave her tower in the first place. I think you catch my drift. Keeping a relationship from being the central drive of a story ensures that the story stays focused on the group as a whole, none of whom are supposed to be the protagonist. Tabletop RPGs are about social dynamics, and part of that is working together to share the spotlight at the table. So with that being said, timing is everything, and sharing space, well, it has its limits. I personally can't imagine not being excited about wanting to watch ships set sail at the table, but that's because I'm just generally horny for everyone's backstories, and that's maybe just a me thing, but moving scenes forward is important. So especially with romantic ones, which can kind of drag as people flirt and make silly jokes to ease what is natural tension, whether it's the people in the scene or outside of it, it helps that when you initiate a romantic scene, you have a particular goal in mind for what you're trying to accomplish, aka, I'm gonna reveal my feelings for her, or I'm gonna tell him why I was so angry for him for that choice he made in the last dungeon. Or maybe you're gonna tell them why their relationship with their patron makes you jealous and nervous. This will help you find what's called a button at the end of the scene, the moment when the story has been told and people can move on, because the time for discussion is over. Like I said, timing is everything, and sometimes waiting to dive into inter-party romance is the best call so that it doesn't disrupt the central storyline. Here's an example. My Shadow Monk Nox has been fighting Onder's imperialism in Eberron from day one of our campaign, but she sort of fell for one of their war heroes who happened to be the barbarian in the party, and their tenuous relationship as co-workers has blossomed into a mutual respect over the course of the campaign. Now, even though that meet cute made a lot of sense to me as a writer and a storyteller, I decided I didn't want to dig too far into the potential for romance I saw between them, because our main questline wasn't done, and I thought it would place our two characters at the center of the story at the expense of the rest of the party. And our story was all about us combating xenophobia and toppling the Ondarian Empire. So we definitely had some one-on-one scenes and moments that moved their relationship forward as friends, but it wasn't until we were doing our post-campaign epilogue that I went in for the kill. I had Nox admit her feelings to Karth, and we worked together as friends and storytellers to determine what the sunset of their story was going to be. It gave us something cool to settle on, and it didn't take anything away from anybody else's part in our major story. It also made everything, for me, a little less awkward because we kept working our way in and out of roleplay moments, discussing what we wanted, and then adding a little bits of RP throughout. And because of that, it was really fun to work together to determine what that storybook ending looked like for those kids. And one more thing about that, which I really want to point out, is that it was incredibly romantic and meaningful, but at no point did the two of us or the rest of the table talk about how that relationship was physicalized. We didn't need to. It was just kind of assumed. And I wanted to toss that out there because I think some people sort of dismiss the chance at role-playing romance because they think they're going to have to, describe how hand hold other hand and get into this whole affair, and I can barely tell someone that I want to make out with them, so that's off the table for me. So you don't have to do that. You can still find a way to talk about the romance in a way that works for you. So let's say you do want to navigate that space. How the hell do you start? Well, firstly, friendly reminder to respect your table mates and your scene partner's boundaries. I know I've already said it, but it always bears repeating. It's incredibly important here. And I've had games where people did end up getting together, or just frankly, getting it on. And I encourage you to start those scenes or enter into those parts of scenes by saying something like this. At this point, my character would attempt to kiss your character. How do you think that plays out? Let it be a discussion. Never speak in absolutes. That's just for silly old Sith, after all. Don't be afraid to ask something like, how far does Xanade see this going? Once everybody agrees, fade to black. As the DM, you can coax this along and make sure everything stays comfortable for the table. There are bound to be mistakes along the way, or even times where people thought that that's what they wanted to do and then think about it later and want to retcon. I encourage DMs to be especially lenient here when it comes to supporting your players in their romantic storytelling. These scenes can be really tough, and sometimes people may realize that they made a decision they didn't really want to make because they felt put on the spot, or that that's what the rest of the table wanted to see. Romance at the table means everyone needs to be especially generous, and part of that is checking in with each other after the game and providing aftercare for each other. Don't be surprised if sometimes people who need the most aftercare are the ones who were not playing out the scene. I find that they're generally going to need more of the focus shifted back to them in the next session. Because everybody needs to feel special, and if you're a player in a romantic storyline, make sure that you return that focus to the rest of the party and get interested in what they want to bring to the table next. So, what do you think? Are you comfortable with engaging in romantic intrigue at your table? Or are there other topics in this area that you'd like to see me cover? Pop them in the comments below, or hit me up on these socials because I want to hear stories from your table. And I hope, baby bards, that you will be my Valentine this year. Do me a favor, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I put out new ones every single week, and I'm also over on Twitch and about to launch a whole new new set of tabletop-related content that I think you are going to love. Check the new schedule on my Discord, which is linked below. I hear what you want, and I'm giving it to you. Oh yeah, I'm giving it to you real scene, fade to black. If you want to support my content, check out my Patreon. Subscribers even have a chance to sign up for games GM'd by yours truly, and I put out new magical items for use in your home games every month. My streams are supported by the folks at The Wandering Merchant. They buy and sell used D&D books, miniatures, and more. You can find a link to their shop in the info section below, and you can use code Hearthsinger for 10% off at checkout. Happy Valentine's Day, baby bards. I hope this video helps you add a little spice to your table. She's just a small town gnome, living in her rocky home. She took the light rail tram going anywhere. He's just a changeling boy, but he was raised by warforged droids. He took the light rail tram going anywhere. Spread out! Oh God, Glee really became a train wreck by the end. Am I right?